Today we have a live workshop which basically talks about why your ELT bills keep growing and how do you actually fix it and what exactly it actually means and why does it grow in the first place, right? And for this, we have Kushagra Deshmukh with us. He's a solutions engineer at Hevo. He's been working with Hevo for a long time. So he's the best person for you to go and ask, like, to fix what all questions in a pipeline is possible, and what needs to be fixed and what configuration is required best. Thank you so much, Kushagra, for joining us today. Moving on to the agenda part, we will talk about your hidden costs with ELT. Like, what exactly does it mean when we talk about hidden costs? What ELT vendors are actually charging you for, how Hevo is different from all of this, and how it's very honest, and what's the kind of benchmarking we show. Then there is a live demo. So, you just do not listen about the cost part, you actually see it through in the infrastructure that is being built. Then we talk about a case study, which is of eBay, a big chain in EU, and they've managed to save above like 50% of cost by switching to Hevo. And then we'll, give you like 5 questions that you actually need to ask yourself. If any of the majority answers are yes, that means it's really time to, reevaluate and see what you can do better on the cost side of your ELT. So at the end, we have Q&A. So please feel free to push in your questions through the Q&A tab, and we'll take it towards the end. And over to you, Kushagra. Let's start with the hidden costs behind your ELT bill.
Sure. Thank you for the introduction and setting the agenda, Radhika. Good morning, everyone. So let's start with what are the hidden costs behind your ELT bill? Cost is a very subjective term when it comes to the entire technical landscape of our data infrastructure. And we have divided this particular segment into four parts where we are seeing hidden costs being found out and also manipulated in such a way that they may be incurring you a bill which is not visible at the end of the day. One definitely is the ELT tool cost itself. You're paying on a pricing model which is not really something that you understand most of the times. It counts on usage, it counts on volume, it can count on active rows, it can count on n number of factors, but it's not transparent at the end of the day. Because of which the data which is being moved into your warehouse is also increasing in terms of the compute that is spent on it. So you see the rise from ELT to the warehouse. When you're seeing this particular rise, you do a lot of back and forth within your pipeline, within your warehouse, which also increases your engineering cost because they might be adding external tools, maybe adding maintenance bandwidth for fixing everything, for putting that time to get the RCA. Lastly, with the ELT, transformation also becomes an important aspect. Ideally, after a raw load of data into your warehouse, your transformation should be uh, technically free of cost or maybe very less on compute. But there are hidden charges, extra charges that are predominantly applied after a threshold when you're running your transformations. So these are all the ELT specific journey and the cost which are related to every aspect of that journey. A quick trivia over there. With Hevo, you are actually seeing the lightest that you can see an ELT tune on your destination. What we have seen is about 20 to 40% of compute cost on Snowflake was saved when we compare to other consumption-based tools. Talking about the varying charge methodology of different ELT vendors. Now, there can be an exhaustive list because of the nature of this particular landscape and how a particular tool is built, a particular product is operating. But we have divided into four major categories, predominantly consumption-based model. First is monthly active row. So you pay only for the active rows that have changed within a month. Then volume base, you pay for a particular GB of data which was replicated from your source to your target. Then there's also connector based pricing, which tells you that, hey, you choose which source you want, and depending on how many connectors you choose by the end of the day, we'll charge you on that basis. And fourth is event based, which is what Hevo offers you in terms of its charging methodology. We'll talk about this further and how it is the most transparent pricing, but it's literally what you're seeing on your window being translated into the cost. So there's same data which you're moving, but depending on the methodology do you choose, the bill that you pay at the end of the month can differ. Talking about big bills and how small change can actually lead to a big bill, I'll take an example of monthly active row as a pricing model. Usually, when we talk about monthly active row, it's often too technical for the C-level audience to understand where exactly is this cost coming from. MAR can also be a black box for the internal team to justify when did the cost increase, where did the spike come from. This is also a factor of a lot of things not visible. For example, there are phantom updates. These are basically updates which account in your MAR but are not visible in your destination. A combination of all of these factors, which is lack of transparency, lack of lineage in terms of how your cost is arriving, is leading to unpredictable bills. And this is something that I deal day in, day out, talking to customers who are using Fivetran, that we don't know where is this cost coming from. And that's not a good state to be in when you're actually trying to scale up your business. So when you can't see what is driving your cost, you cannot predict how you're going to scale up as you add more connectors. With Hevo, what we are giving is honest pricing by design. And it's as simple as that. We have batch visibility of all the data which are moving through your pipelines, starting from historical, which is again free of charge. You have complete visibility on the incremental data which is being moved into your destination. And within the UI itself, you have a usage summary of exactly the amount of data loaded, translating into your usage summary, eventually leading up to your cost. There's also cost savings in terms of the destination efficiency. So, like I mentioned, we are the lightest on your destination. So, you'll see a lot more reasonably decreasing compute at the warehouse level. No, typically, when a customer is switching from Fivetran to Hevo, there's by default 30 to 40% of cost reduction, but 100% transparent billing is given to the customer as a sign of trust of how you can actually use our tool and also trust on our tool to scale up your business. Lastly, there are also maintenance bandwidth, which also lead up to a lot of cost that we saw in the first slide, is resolved within the tool itself. So we have faster detection of your errors. We often notify you of what needs to be looked at, what needs attention. And hence, there is a clear visibility on how your pipeline is eventually transpiring. And there is a streamlined recovery in case there are failures. So when there is less downtime, when issues do not happen more often, your team bandwidth is actually being spent upon the right operation which is required to be done by the team. These are some benchmarks that we have run across multiple tools. The benchmark was about 383 GB of data, about 500 million incremental records. And you can see how when it comes to a specific number of records or volume of data, how Hevo is, uh, you know, optimally charging with respect to all the enterprise ETL, open source ETL tools, legacy tools, cloud native tools. So we've run this benchmarking across multiple tools in the market, and there's up to 12x cost that we are looking at as savings over here. Now, let's move to what you're going to see in the demo. We talked about all the features that actually preserve your bandwidth. So failure detection policies, how we are handling the schema, how the observability is actually giving you healthy pipelines, And lastly, how all of this is actually visible in the pricing that you're actually going to pay for the platform. So let's move to the demo. So right now I am at the Hevo landing page, and as you can see, we are a complete SaaS platform. You can have different regions that you can choose to have your Hevo account on. And on this particular page, what you're seeing are different pipelines running in, taking data from disparate sources, pushing into a specific destination. You have a sync schedule of, just giving you a overall visibility of the pipelines already created. The drill is pretty simple. It's a basic four-step process. I'm going to choose a SaaS source for depiction today because normally these are the sources where uh, you don't interact a lot with the source itself. Because when you're talking about databases, you do have an interaction, you do know what kind of tables are coming in. But with ad-based sources, it's predominantly reports. So you cannot predict what would be a particular volume of a particular report. Hence, I've taken a SaaS example. So we'll be looking at GA4 today. I'll walk you through the pipeline creation process now. So create pipeline, we move to this directory. There are about 150 plus native connectors spread across different verticals. So we have databases and file systems. Here you'll have all your SQL, NoSQL databases, engineering analytics based sources, finance and accounting softwares, marketing ad based sources, product, sales and support. Like I mentioned, 150 plus, but still, if you feel that there is a connector which is not present in this directory and you probably want to connect to it, we also have a agentic setup wherein we can roll out that connector for you. And we can provide you that connector within the directory. So both the options are available. You can contact us in case you feel there is a connector which you want, but probably is not in the list. I'll move to the marketing section because I want to look at Google Analytics 4. So I'll select the source. I'll select Google BigQuery as my destination today. Now, this is the first step of creating the pipeline, which is basically source configuration. I'll name it as demo source. Okay, my name is correct. There's also a setup guide which talks about, okay, how do you go about creating the pipeline, the prerequisites required, explaining the nitty-gritties of the pipeline configuration, the source configuration itself. But first, I'll just put in my Google account. Let me just sign in through my Hevo ID. It's a very small process. It's an OAuth exchange. You allow the data to be seen by Hevo. Then there's account selection. Typically, with ad-based sources, there are multiple accounts. There's also like a manager account and user account relationship. Hence, if you want to sync all the accounts, you do have an option. In case you want to sync specific accounts, you can just go on, select the specific account window. And furthermore, you can choose what are the different accounts that you would want to move ahead with. There's also historical sync duration, which is how back in time you want to go to pull out data from a particular account. Now, interesting point over here is there's also a rollback window. People usually get confused that, hey, we already have a historical sync. Why do you need a rollback? Again, coming to an ad-based source, what happens typically when your historical report has already moved and now your pipeline is running incremental data? But often at times, the historical report also changes within Google Ads, within Google Analytics. And you need to maintain those changes, be cognizant of how that report has updated. Maybe months later, uh, you already started using it. Hence, there is a rollback window which also looks back at those historical reports which were already loaded. And if there are any changes within this rollback window, those changes will also be written into your destination. So we are covering all the grounds in terms of not only the incremental movement, but also a rollback movement of the historical data. Now, like I mentioned, I want to sync specific accounts. Maybe I want to see how my docs is performing, how is our articles, KB articles performing. So I'll just select these two properties. Furthermore, there's also a custom report option. Uh, the entire connector is built on the analytics API philosophy. Hence, if you have used Google Analytics, you will be accustomed to how a report is configured. There's a predefined report which we have synced, and then there's also a custom report you can build yourself. So let's just name it test. I can define a template. Maybe I just need acquisition level data, conversion level data, content level data. So you can choose a particular template relevant to your downstream use case. Then select particular dimensions and fields which you eventually want that report to be fetching. So you can go on to all the different parameters, demographics, user, select all the particular fields which are required in your template. Then you can even filter this down, aggregate this. For example, it can be a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly aggregation. You can just define operators of maybe exact match of age. If you're just targeting a specific demographic, you can put that condition. And eventually you can customize the report which you're going to move to your destination right during the pipeline configuration. So no manual overhead of validation. It's just the fields that you're defining will be available as a report for you at the destination. I'll cancel it for now, continue, configure my destination. This will go through all the details that I have provided, validate it, and then redirect me to the destination. Now, I already have a pre-configured BigQuery destination, so let me select that. Once I select it, you'll again see a getting started guide of how the setup is done for a BigQuery destination. It's majorly the project ID, the location that you have the GCS bucket on. In case you do not have, we can give you our managed GCS bucket, and followed by that, you just authenticate with a private key. The meteor portion is how do you configure the pipeline. So let me just name my pipeline, webinar. I'll put my prefix. Now, prefix again is an important factor. You may be bringing data from multiple ad-based sources, couple of log-based sources through some API applications. Eventually, everything is landing into one OLAP layer. Could be BigQuery, could be Snowflake. But you still want the schema level segregation at that destination. Now, you don't want to create multiple destination with multiple schemas, but still want that segregation. That segregation is right over here. If I just define a GA4 prefix over here, uh, my destination BigQuery will have this as a schema, and all the tables, all the reports that I'm going to pull will rely upon this schema. Similarly, if I create like a meta ads pipeline and use the same destination, I can still segregate a meta prefix and my metadata will lie over there. So that's the visibility you actually have at the pipeline level itself. So when you're going and validating your data within your BigQuery, you do not have to firefight, okay, where did my data land? It's just with the prefix, you can just search for where it landed. Talking about more failure handling features, by default, we have set a moderate policy. Moderate policy of failure handling typically is you setting a condition that, let's say if there's less than 10,000 failed rows in my object, I'll still continue to push data for that object. This is one condition. Now, there can be a stricter condition that don't load data for objects with any failed event. So even if there's like a single failed row, your object will be paused, it will be disabled. You will be notified that, hey, there is some problem. Please reconfigure this at the source level and resync the object. So you're not actually charged on the basis of anything and everything which is coming. There is a clear demarcation of what should be the right data which should move. We should be cognizant of what failures are and then resync the right data in the destination. I'll keep it as moderate. Coming to schema evolution policies, pretty straightforward. Allow all changes. Basically, any change at the source level, be it new schema, table, column, will be adapted, propagated in your destination on the fly. There could be a case of a disaster recovery server you're trying to move the data from, which might not require any new syncs. So you just block all the changes in that case. Or could be a case of an ad hoc report coming in from maybe your MailChimp, coming in from your Jira, which might not require any new schemas or tables, but just there are a few additional column level changes you did, and you want your previous row to be adapted as per the new column. So you do allow column level changes. So very straightforward, depending on your use case, you can clearly see what is the policy and how it can be utilized for replicating your data further. Then we sync the pipeline based on a frequency. So it can be an hourly pull, it can be a minute-based pull. And you can also sync on demand, which is you configure your pipeline and just sync it based on your API triggers and orchestrate it further with Airflow. So I'll move to schedule pipeline, sync this for every 5 minutes. Lastly, talking more about observability, latency becomes an important factor when you're moving data. So we provide you that option of setting up your threshold, setting up the threshold based on your SLAs. In case that threshold is kind of broken, you do get alerted of the same that, hey, your latency threshold has been crossed. You may want to just look at your pipeline and see if there are any warnings, any failures, and stuff like that. So I'll just pause it, move to the penultimate step, which is selecting the objects. Now, might be a lot of objects, but still you have a schematic segregation of how those objects are going to land. You may select all or none, or maybe just particular objects which are required for the report. You already see what kind of load mode we are choosing, and not just the load mode, but if you don't want a particular field to be part of your uh, downstream report, you can choose to filter that out right away. So saves a lot of compute at the step before your data is loaded, because you're filtering the right data which has to be moved in the destination. So I can just go on, maybe not have any demographics for my particular output. I can just go on deselect, select whichever is required. And within this, once I deselect what I do not want to move, you are still getting notified that, hey, there are a few objects that you've excluded. Do you still want to have a look at what those objects are and check if it is not required? When I save and continue, it will again ask me for the same. So clear validation from the user in terms of the data that has to be moved. I'll confirm this, look at all my configuration from a source, destination, pipeline, and object standpoint, and save my pipeline. So very simple 4-step process of how we can create a pipeline. Now, when a pipeline is created, and since we're talking about cost over here, how effective it is to view the cost. This is a running pipeline now. The first job is a historical job. Like I was mentioning, the historical job is not charged. There is no events which are billable. So you can still see how many events were ingested as part of historical logs, but this does not account in your billing. You can even have a granular look of which particular object was moving how much event, how much time did it take for Hevo to ingest it for the load into my BigQuery, and overall view of how my historical job ran, how many objects did it actually move. You can have session logs of individual jobs for, again, granular analysis, maybe attach this with your CloudWatch for better governance. All of this is available at the UI level. Then talking about the billable events, which are followed by the historical, since this is a batch process, every further job will be an incremental job. And we only charge on the incremental events. So you can again see the same thing. How many events were ingested? How many were loaded? And for which object, how many events were ingested? How many were loaded? So all of the granular details are visible. And eventually what events we have loaded from the source to destination is what you're paying in Hevo. So it's very, very clear. You can even just go on looking at all your incremental data and see how much event is translating. So it's predictable. You can always see what's coming as you scale and add more and more sources. Talking more about how customizable it is, in case there are things that you want to change as you go along seeing your consumption, you can always reconfigure your source destination pipeline. It's not that you have to again recreate everything. It's editable once it is live. You can always have like an object level view of whatever you have moved. And in case a resync is required for a particular object, view fields, anything, you will be completely given that in the UI itself. And we log everything. So right from the pipeline creation process to any mapping that happened to any transformation that you ran, everything is logged in the activity log section over here. So there may be a case where there are multiple folks who are collaborating on a pipeline. You can actually see which person did what on a pipeline, maintains that governance within your team also in terms of how your data pipeline has to be functioned. And this is important because you may not know what which person did, which has led to a particular problem and eventually leading to a higher cost or maybe a leakage in the bill. So we provide you that visibility as well as we create your pipeline. Now, this is about pipeline, how a pipeline is created, how you can actually see job level details and the events moving and the events translating to your bill. There's also a usage summary within the UI itself. If I just go to my billing and go to my usage summary, you will be able to see all the active and even deleted pipeline consumption within the UI itself. So I'll just filter it by active pipelines. There are more filters available. In case you have multiple regions of operation, you can filter it by region. You can also filter it by the engine that we're using. Now you can see my GA4 to BigQuery pipeline edge on August 13, it moved this amount of data. Between July to August, it moved this amount of data. So there is a complete visibility. You can always download this consumption report. It will give you the entire view of all the pipelines which are running, no matter if it is an active or deleted pipeline. So get a complete view. You do get this view, and whatever you are calculating in terms of the overall consumption, you select a plan accordingly. So it's very, very straightforward. You choose how much connectors you want to utilize. You see the consumption. You choose the plan based on the consumption. So very, very transparent. Like I mentioned, 100% transparent. This was about the demo. I'll be happy if you have any questions, but before that, we'll move to the slides again and take up few more points like a case study. Like Radhika was mentioning towards the start, Iberi, a huge customer from EU, switched from Fivetran to Hevo, and a lot of things changed. Salesforce was one of the prominent connectors that they have. Apart from it, a lot more ad sources, few log-based sources. All of them were switched from Fivetran to Hevo. But what went wrong? With Fivetran, there were bugs in the history mode, which kind of started the whole reliability conversation. The support during these critical issues was very limited. Uh, as the volumes grew, the cost also was directly proportional, and they could not track how the schema changes were happening, and it also led to a lot of pipeline maintenance as they went along. What they needed was effectively a reliable pipeline for tracking everything in terms of the history mode. They wanted a support which can be trusted upon in terms of critical issues and a predictive cost because they want to scale, add more sources, and everything automated without any manual intervention on the issues with respect to schema and with respect to the pipeline itself. With Hevo, they actually received 100% accuracy on the data that were moving. About 50 million events per month was synced from Salesforce, like I mentioned, one of the prominent source. Uh, Very low latency cases, also mid-level latency cases like 15-minute data refreshes, and overall improvement in terms of the customer experience and the reliability on the product. You can see the feedback that we have received from analytics engineer at Ivory over here. Now, a food for thought. I would want you guys to, leave with these 5 questions in your mind, which may give you a perspective on whether we have the right setup for our data pipelines in our current stack. So, Are you guys getting alerted the moment a record fails, or do you hear it from internal or external stakeholders? Any schema changes that happen at the source level, does your pipeline break? Do you get timely support in terms of critical issues? Can you predict the cost before you actually paying for it? And do you worry about adding new pipelines without the connector-based pricing? Uh, if there's any yes, not even one or two, if not even like five, there's even one yes, I think it's time to switch. And switching is very easy. We offer a 14-day free trial, no credit card, no call required. We'll give you a personalized walkthrough of how we can serve your use case in terms of the connectors that we already have. And specifically for existing Fivetran users, if you are looking for a cost saving, like we discussed, there's almost upfront 30 to 40% cost savings. We already have a calculator to tell you how much of an impact it can make with your current MAR value. So you can just ping us and we'll help you calculating your MAR to event cost savings as well. Now, lastly, any questions? Happy to take that.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kushagra, for walking us through what it exactly means when the ELT bills are high, how we typically do at Hevo, and what to look out for. I think this is a pretty interesting question that we typically face during all of these conversations that we have with customers, or even lately, it's a part of discussion of overall data infrastructure as well, right? Folks, we have a couple of minutes. How about you drop all your questions in the Q&A tab? We'll wait a couple of minutes for Kushagra and we can answer them right here. And if not right now, you might want to connect later. We'll definitely be sending an email over with all the content we have discussed, all the resources that we can share for you all to be confident of whichever data setup you have as of now. Would love to address the questions. I'll wait a few minutes to see if there are any questions. Okay, so we have a question which says, how do you handle schema changes from Fivetran to Hevo?
Right. Great question, Jay Muller. Uh, all our connectors are at 5 trend parity. So whatever data model that you're seeing within Fivetran, Hevo has built the connectors accordingly. And even the metadata that we send in terms of the deleted add flag, like you just mentioned, in terms of the op type of how we are loading it, be it insert, update, or delete, everything is tracked within the metadata. So not just from a schema parity standpoint, even from a metadata management standpoint, it is running at par with the connector you are running through Fivetran.
So they've given an example as well. For example, _5
Right. So
trend
that's where I
deleted.
was mentioning even the metadata that we are moving. 510 deleted is a metadata column.
Okay,
So when
understood.
everything is running at parity.
Interesting. And we also have a migration team set up in-house, where, folks would be there to help you move that particular, connector, etc. as well. So there will always be external, like, help required from the team during the POC phase or even later on as well. Cool. That was an interesting question. We'll wait a few more minutes if there are any more questions. Cool. I do not see any more questions coming up. Thank you everybody who joined in, asked questions. It's really insightful for us as well to, tailor our session accordingly and make sure that it's as per the audience we have. Thank you so much again, Kushagra, for joining in. We'll be sending over all the resources. Once again, thank you so much, and I hope we meet in other webinars, events, following up this one as well. Right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.